You can't park that here, Michael. HOA regulations, Section 9C, clearly prohibit vehicle storage in open driveways over 72 hours. I looked Colleen dead in the eye, hand resting on the rusted hood of my father's 1967 Impala. It's not stored, it's my daughter's ride to school, and Colleen, I rewired the HOA's surveillance grid 3 years ago when y'all cheaped out on contractors. That motion sensor you're citing still pings my server before it pings yours. She blinked, just once, but I caught it, that little flicker of panic behind all the pearl-clutching civility. Name's Michael Landry, Army vet, digital forensics now. I don't take threats from HOA Karens hiding behind bylaws they don't understand, and I sure as hell don't forget where I came from. That car? It's not just a car. It's the last thing my daughter remembers her grandfather by. You watching from a neighborhood like mine, where rules feel like chains wrapped in smiling threats, you might want to stick around. Things are about to heat up. The sun had just broken past the oaks when Riley tugged her hoodie tight and stepped onto the porch. "You didn't move it again?" she asked, eyes flicking toward the Impala. "Nope." She smiled. Not wide, but enough. That car had dust older than she was, but she treated it like it was sacred, and it was. Her grandfather built the engine block with me when I was 16. He died of a stroke in that very driveway 5 years back. Now, that Impala sat like a boundary stone, between memory and control, between my house and them. Colleen Durrett, president of the Pinebrook Estates HOA, had always found ways to make herself feel taller. Clipboard, glossy blonde perm, voice like saccharin laced with venom. Her favorite game was quoting bylaws out of context to people who didn't have time to fight back. But I wasn't most people. First strike came wrapped in a neon yellow V. Violation slip, unauthorized vehicle presence. Second was subtler, an email with veiled legalese about property values and ongoing non-compliance. Third, she showed up in person. That's when I knew it wasn't about rules, it was about obedience. "This neighborhood's gone soft," my neighbor Hal muttered last month. "Used to be folks just minded their own. Funny thing is, I was minding mine, until they brought it to my door." That same afternoon, Colleen and her clipboard crew had the gall to step on the grass, my grass, and snap photos from behind the hedges. The Impala was covered, tires clean, tag registered. But rules weren't the point. I was the point. Control was the currency, and I wasn't paying. 2 days later, I caught a glint through the blinds, silver hair bobbing past the driveway. Colleen again, but this time she wasn't alone. Diane Trent, HOA secretary, trailed behind her like a shadow afraid of its own shape. Diane never spoke unless prompted, always scribbling notes with hands that shook more than they should. That day, though, she paused at the edge of the lawn, looked at the Impala, then back at me through the window, didn't wave, didn't smile. But she saw me, and I logged that look, because it wasn't indifference, it was guilt. They didn't know I had motion alerts synced to my phone, didn't know I'd archived every interaction, every email, every one of Colleen's surprise drop-ins. Hell, they didn't even know I installed a secondary Dashcam on the Impala when they first started sniffing around. They were playing a neighborhood power game. I was building a case. By the end of that week, Riley came home shaken, said someone followed her from the bus stop to the porch. I reviewed the footage. Colleen's SUV trailed behind her at a snail's pace. Lights off, license plate just visible enough. I didn't say anything. I didn't go to the HOA. I bought 2 more bars. E-cameras instead. Mounted them under the porch, angle fixed on the driveway and street. That's when I knew. This wasn't about lawn heights or mailbox paint. It was a war of attrition, and the enemy thought I'd fold like the others. They forgot one thing. I don't scare easy, and I don't forget the people who threaten my kid. She didn't expect the click of my camera. Colleen's hand was on my car door, my father's car, fumbling with a dull brass master key like she had every right in the world to be there. I didn't yell, didn't slam the door open. I just stood inside, behind the living room curtain, holding the shutter remote and watching the timestamp roll in at 2:13 p.m. Broad daylight. No apology, no explanation, just her and her little empire of imagined authority. 2 hours later, I walked into the police station with the footage. Officer Brenner reviewed the clip 3 times, eyes narrowing with each pass. I didn't bother sitting down. I wanted the pressure in my back to stay taut, to remind me I wasn't backing down. "She doesn't have any legal right to enter your vehicle, even if it's on your property," Brenner finally said. Far as I'm concerned, this is attempted unlawful entry. You want to press? I nodded once. He clicked his pen. We'll start the report. But just a heads up. When it involves HOA stuff, they've got lawyers. This might turn civil real fast. I'm counting on it, I said, slipping the USB copy across the desk. By the time I got back, Riley was sitting on the porch steps, legs tucked close, hoodie sleeves pulled down over her hands. She didn't look up right away, just stared at the Impala like it had somehow failed to protect her. She touched it, didn't she? She asked. Yeah. Did she see the cam? Nope. Riley gave a short nod and pressed her sleeve to her eye. Grandpa would have gone nuclear. I cracked half a smile. Yeah, and probably gotten arrested twice for it. She laughed, just once, but it was enough. The air felt lighter for a second. That night, I installed an extra infrared cam under the car's frame and linked it directly to my offline NAS. No cloud storage, no wireless breach points, just steel, wires, and memory, exactly how my dad taught me. But Colleen wasn't stupid. She didn't show up again for 3 days. Instead, her response came in writing. A thick envelope landed in my mailbox, hand-delivered, no postage. Inside, a formal community misconduct complaint citing disruption, camera harassment, and a demand for voluntary mediation. Her signature was scrawled across the bottom like a challenge. But the kicker? She'd attached a photograph of the Impala, taken from behind my backyard fence. She was escalating. The next morning, I brought it to the station again. Brenner wasn't on shift, but the deputy logged the image into the file. This is stalking behavior, she muttered, almost too quietly to count as official. I didn't need it to be official, I just needed it to be recorded. Back at Pinebrook, I noticed Diane Trent again, standing by her mailbox, flipping through envelopes, not really reading. Her eyes darted once toward me, then back down. She didn't wave. She didn't walk away either. Diane, I said, stepping toward the curb. Her hands twitched slightly around the envelopes. Michael. She's pushing harder. You seeing it? A pause. Her lips moved like they were debating permission with themselves. Then, it's not new. Just louder now. What's she after? Her voice was a whisper. Control. And with that, she turned and walked inside. But that moment, it wasn't silence. It was fracture. A crack in the wall. I went back in and scanned the footage again, not for her, for proof of pattern, repetition, timing. The approach vector Colleen always used, never the front, always from the east hedge, same time window, same outfit even. I logged every instance, attached metadata, stacked them in a chronological archive. I wasn't building a case anymore. I was designing a trap. Riley stepped into my office just as I was labeling folders. You look like you're prepping for trial. Maybe I am. Her eyes scanned the corkboard now cluttered with stills and printouts. You think this'll stop her? No, but it'll make her explain herself in front of people who matter. And that's when I decided. Next time she touched my property, or anyone's, she wouldn't just face a complaint. She'd face the law. Because this wasn't just about a car, or a fence, or an outdated HOA clause. It was about dignity. Mine, my daughter's, my father's memory. Colleen made one mistake too many. She brought the fight to my driveway. Now I was bringing it to her doorstep. I hadn't expected to see Diane again so soon. But 2 days later, she was standing at the community center podium during the open forum portion of the HOA meeting. Back straight, voice steady. Not once did she look in my direction, but I noticed the paper shaking in her hand. Colleen sat 2 seats over from her, arms folded like a queen watching peasants mumble. She wore one of her trademark red blazers, symbolic power dressed in polyester, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. As secretary, I just want to remind the board that all complaints should go through proper digital channels, Diane said, clearing her throat mid-sentence. Hand-delivered notices aren't compliant under Section 4C. It was small, technical, but she said it while holding a copy of the envelope Colleen shoved into my mailbox. Colleen's eyes flicked toward her. Diane dropped he. The whole room felt tighter after that, like we were all standing on a frozen pond and someone just whispered, crack. After the meeting, I waited until the parking lot cleared. Diane was loading a tote into the trunk of her Prius when I walked up. You meant that as a warning, didn't you? I asked. She didn't flinch, just closed the trunk quietly. I'm not allowed to comment on pending reports, she said, but her eyes said more than her words ever could. Did she threaten you too? A pause, a tight breath. I have a mortgage, Michael. 2 kids at college. She's persuasive. That word again. Control. She pulled out her keys, but I blocked the door gently. She used a master key on my vehicle, took photos behind my fence. That's not just HOA bullying, it's criminal. I didn't say it wasn't. Then help me stop her. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. And when she drove off, she left behind something folded under my windshield wiper, a printed excerpt of the HOA bylaws with 3 sections circled in yellow highlighter and a sticky note. Check page 14, easement clause, buried footnote. I stayed up past midnight reading, and there it was, an obscure clause from 1997 allowing emergency access keys to shared property zones only if authorized by vote and only in the event of urgent public risk. My driveway wasn't shared, my car wasn't zoned, and there had never been a vote. She'd broken policy and trespassed. The next morning, Riley noticed something on the front porch. A white envelope slipped under the bench Dad built 20 years ago. Inside, a single photo, a close-up of our front door camera lens. Not the footage, the lens itself. She was letting us know she'd been inches from the house, and she hadn't flinched, not once. Dad, this feels like a threat. It is. What do we do? I didn't have an answer ready. Not yet. Because fear has a way of slowing logic, of turning strategy into static. But I remembered Diane's hand trembling, the unspoken risk behind her whisper. And I realized this wasn't just about protecting ourselves, it was about exposing the whole system. I started printing copies, photos, timestamp logs, bylaws, annotated maps of easement boundaries. The corkboard in my study transformed into a mosaic of quiet war. By Friday, I mailed a certified letter to the HOA board, a formal misconduct complaint with photographic evidence, a line-by-line policy violation list, and an open request for mediation with legal counsel present. The silence that followed was the loudest part. Until Sunday morning. Riley opened the front door and found a citation posted on our mailbox post. Violation notice, unauthorized surveillance systems. Colleen's name was at the bottom, again. She's retaliating, Riley said. Yeah, and now she's leaving fingerprints. I didn't rip it down. I didn't even touch it. I just photographed it, front and back, logged the timestamp, and emailed it straight to Officer Brenner with the subject line, ongoing harassment patter. To escalation documented. That night, Diane texted me one word, careful. I didn't sleep much after that, because war doesn't always start with shouting. Sometimes it begins with silence, and one person finally saying, enough. Drop a comment if you've ever faced a neighbor stuck in the middle. Did they step up or look away? Tell me where you're watching from, and don't miss what happens next, because now the silence is cracking. She escalated when I didn't respond. That Monday afternoon, a faded yellow sticker appeared under my driver's side mirror. Violation, landscaping obstructs sightline. Odd, since the bush in question had been trimmed 5 days ago. Colleen's handwriting scrawled the date, 3 hours before Diane's text. I stepped into action immediately. No confrontation, no message. I pruned the plant with surgical precision, recording the entire trim on my phone. The footage ended with me leaning on the Impala hood, scrolling through metadata. Time-stamped. Location stamped. That evening, Riley had dinner waiting in the kitchen. Meatloaf on a plate, mashed potatoes piled high. She watched me walk in. Did you trim the bush? She asked, dark eyes soft. Yeah, I met her gaze. And I recorded it. She nodded at the screen I showed her. You're keeping everything. I am. Dinner was quiet. She hummed. Fork paused halfway to her lips. I'd tried to shield her, but I could see she worried. Fighting back was my responsibility. Protecting her was everything. Later, I spotted Diane at the mailbox again. She looked different, less stiff. She held an archived binder instead of envelopes. Old community maps, deed plots, easement documentation. She caught me looking and ducked her head. I walked over. You got that from the HOA vault? I asked. She gripped the binder like it was hot. Let's just say I found a way. Immediate tension pulsed, but she didn't run. This could help, I said gently. You know where she crossed the line? Diane's gaze flicked past me to the drive. Boundaries, Michael. Property lines? They ignored them when they issued easement permits. A pause. I couldn't stop it back then. Her voice cut like gravel. A beat. Then she handed me a folded map. Look at that red line. Now look at your Impala. It sits outside the shaded zone. They've been citing everyone over that. I guess it never mattered till you came along. That night, I printed the map, overlaid the old survey boundaries, and stapled them next to the metadata photos. I took a long walk around the yard, stopping at the porch bench. Just the bench, moonlit and still. I thought of Dad. Thought of the nights we bolted that thing together, his muttered jokes about solid as the truth. It felt necessary again. The next morning, the HOA board meeting came like clockwork. I was there early. Diane slipped in behind me. She looked away. Colleen started the meeting with her usual grandstanding. I want to thank everyone for coming promptly. We'll address homeowner violations first, starting with the landscaping obstruction on 12 Rosewood. I stood, met her eyes. With all due respect, that violation was issued without recourse to verified sightline measurement. I've documented the trim, backed it with metadata, and consulted the original property survey. None show obstruction. Colleen's smile tightened. Mr. Landry, your documentation is impressive, but HOA rules are discretionary to preserve community aesthetic. We stand by the notice. Diane cleared her throat, so soft, barely there, yet unbelievably loud in that room. Actually, that call wasn't discretionary. It was incorrect. Section 5B requires third-party sightline confirmation. We don't have that. 30 eyes turned to Diane. She swallowed, back straight. I'll withdraw the notice and recommend review of enforcement procedures. That shook the room. Not a victory, but the foundation cracked. Colleen protested. We'll reconvene next week after review. I'd rather you do it now, I said, voice steady. Because my property rights aren't up for delayed judgment. I have legal counsel drafted. The ball is in your court now. A hush fell. Like when lightning pauses the world, the crowd shifted. I could feel their gaze. My own heartbeat slowed. After the meeting, Diane caught my eye. A small nod. In my driveway, I found another envelope. This one had just maps, multiple overlays, boundary notes, easement footnotes, smaller print than legalese deserves. Scrawled in pencil at the bottom. They never told everyone. It was buried. I didn't open it on the spot. Because I already had everything I needed to push forward. Riley appeared at the front door, arms crossed, glancing between me and the map. What now? She asked. I folded the papers slowly. Now we press harder. This is bigger than a car door or a bush. It's about our rights. She exhaled, relief and readiness both. And I realized I wasn't alone. We'd found our first true ally. I didn't sleep that night. The envelope Diane left. It sat unopened on the dining table, untouched next to Riley's half-drunk tea and a folded napkin she'd written homework notes on. I stared at it for hours, like it was alive, like it was watching me. At 2:11 a.m., I took it downstairs. Our basement was half-finished. Drywall, storage, bins, the old laundry sink my father refused to replace because it had character. The air smelled of paint thinner and forgotten summers. I flicked the light, but it sputtered twice and died. Of course it did. I grabbed my headlamp from the tool rack and crouched near the breaker. Light carved slivers through the dark. As I moved deeper, past shelves of holiday boxes and old camping gear, I spotted something wedged between insulation boards. A taped cardboard file, gray from age, hidden behind loose fiberglass like someone never meant for it to be found. Inside, HOA transfer paperwork, original bylaws from 1992, a signature from the previous landowner, but that's not what stopped my breath. It was a letter, dated 11 years ago, handwritten. To whoever finds this, they're using the easements to slowly shift the lines, parcel by parcel. I signed off on Lot 8 because I thought it was harmless, but when I pushed back on Lot 12, they retaliated. Fines, inspections, noise complaints. My wife wanted to move. I stayed. I regret it now. Watch the language in Section D, and trust no vote where the minutes go missing. If they cited your car, you're not alone. Signed, James P. Harwell, HOA Vice President, resigned. My hands trembled, not out of fear, out of recognition. Lot 12 was my address. I sat on the concrete floor, the chill cutting through my jeans. Riley had never met James Harwell. He died a year before we moved in. But I remembered a story from the hardware store clerk, the guy who said, "Be careful with Colleen. Last guy who challenged her disappeared into citations until he snapped." I'd assumed it was small-town drama. Turns out, it was prophecy. I opened Diane's envelope next, a stapled map, sections highlighted, one tabbed, Lot 12 redefined 2013, deed re-recorded without homeowner signature. That's illegal. You can't redraw a parcel boundary and refile without consent, not without an easement reissue or court notice. They forged it. I climbed back upstairs, still in boots and dirt-caked jeans, spreading the papers across the kitchen counter. Rill. A walked in, bleary-eyed in a hoodie. "You okay?" I pointed at the old letter. "You remember that HOA guy, the one they said retired? The one with the golden retriever? Yeah. Mom said he built that swing before we moved in." "That's the one." I slid the papers toward her. "He tried to fight this." She read slowly, mouth parting in disbelief. "They erased him." "Not anymore." By 9 a.m. I had scanned everything, filed digital copies in a cloud archive, sent backup to a contact at the local zoning office, and another to a lawyer I used for a work contract years ago, Eleanor Brooks. She wasn't cheap, but she was precise. I only had to send one line. How illegal is a forged redefinition of a property boundary with no homeowner consent? Her reply came an hour later. "Depends on jurisdiction, but if it ties to asset seizure, you've got civil and possibly criminal grounds, especially if tied to financial coercion. Also, don't go public yet. Let me read it all." Too late for that last part. Because while I was talking to Eleanor, Riley forwarded the letter to Diane. And Diane? She forwarded it to the rest of the board. By noon, I had 6 emails, half from board members I didn't know by name. One simply said, "We didn't know. She never let us see the land record archive. Please don't involve attorneys yet." I didn't reply. Instead, I walked out to the swing. The same one James Harwell built, the same one Riley grew up on. I sat there, hands braced on the wood frame, and watched the street. Colleen hadn't come yet, but I knew she would. And this time, she wouldn't bring a citation. She'd bring a lie, and I was ready to bury it. I was still sitting on that swing when Colleen's Lexus pulled up. She didn't park on the curb like a neighbor. She blocked my driveway like a warning. Driver's window down, designer sunglasses glinting, one perfectly manicured hand gripping the wheel like she owned the street. "I think you've caused enough trouble for one morning," she said without getting out. I didn't move. "You forged a boundary redefinition. That's not trouble. That's a felony." She smirked. "You don't know what you're talking about. I've got the original deed, Colleen, the one signed by Harwell, and the map with your illegal redraft." Her smile didn't even twitch. "Oh, please, that old man was unstable. Everyone knew it. You think anyone will believe a scribbled note over certified filings?" "I don't need them to believe the note. I've got the refiled document, time-stamped and not signed by me. That's all it takes." She stepped out, heels clicking across the pavement like war drums. "You really think a lawyer's going to take you seriously with that swing set and flannel shirt? You're a technician, Michael, not a threat." Funny thing about technicians, I stood up slowly, we're the ones who wire the cameras. Her expression shifted, just slightly. She didn't like being watched. I reached into my back pocket, pulled out the USB drive Riley had prepped. "Here's a clip from last Thursday. Your vice chair admitted you never let them see the parcel logs. That puts obstruction squarely on you." She snatched the drive, glanced down at it like it might bite. I continued, "You're used to people rolling over. James didn't, and neither will I." She didn't say a word, just walked back to her car like nothing had happened. But her jaw was tight. The swing creaked behind me as I sat again. That old frame, built by the man they erased, it felt like a line in the sand. Not just nostalgia, resistance. Later that afternoon, Diane showed up at our back gate. She wasn't dressed for HOA politics anymore. No pearls, no clipboard, just jeans and a nervous smile. "I need to talk," she said. "Off record." I let her in. She glanced around like the trees had ears. "She's not just forging paperwork. She's been pressuring the notary. The same woman signs every transfer, always on Wednesdays, always on Colleen's porch." My pulse kicked. "You're sure?" "I tried asking once, said we needed to audit deed changes. Colleen told me to leave it alone. The next day my mailbox was smashed in." Riley came downstairs just in time to hear that. She crossed her arms. "That's intimidation." Diane's eyes flicked to her. "It's a pattern. She does it subtle. Ruined lawn reports, paint code citations. Makes you think you're the one messing up. I turned to her. Why are you telling us this now? Diane's voice dropped. Because I found something worse. She's targeting veterans. That stopped me cold. She pulled lot records from anyone who's registered disabled or retired military. Says they don't maintain the standard. Wants them moved out. The silence in the room was thick. Riley leaned against the fridge like she needed the support. I kept copies, Diane added. Didn't know who to trust. But your daughter, what she said at the hearing, I figured you'd do something. I nodded. I will. The next 3 hours blurred into one task after another. We copied files, scanned Diane's notes, cross-referenced parcel edits with public veterans' records. Every red flag went into a spreadsheet Riley labeled Bexley Trail. By sundown, we had 11 names, all targeted, all silenced, and now all connected. Eleanor called just as we wrapped. I read through the deed packet. You've got something real, Michael, but this has to go surgical. No public accusations yet. Let me draw the first strike. That night, I walked out to the swing again. Riley followed, sitting beside me this time. You think James Harwell knew it would come to this? She asked. I think he hoped someone else would finish what he started. She looked out toward the street. Good thing we're stubborn. I laughed softly. No, good thing we're ours, not theirs. And the swing creaked beneath us, still standing, still ours. Tell me in the comments, what's the one thing in your home or community that reminds you of who you really are? A tree your parent planted? A letter? A hidden photo? Let's remind the Karens of the world. Some roots run deeper than rules. Drop your story below and where you're watching from. We're building more than a neighborhood here. We're building truth. I woke up to a dull ache in my jaw. Not the tension exactly, but the weight of what was coming. Legal counsel started today. Eleanor Brooks's email hit my inbox just after sunrise. Meet at my office at 2. Bring all evidence. We're making a plan that can't be ignored. Riley sat across from me at the kitchen table, feet curled under her chair. The swing creaked in her mind just as it did ours. I gave her the binder, maps, Harwell's letter, deed scans, all labeled and ready. Are you sure you're ready? She asked, voice low. My gaze settled on the wooden bench Dad built, symbol of our roots. Yeah, time to move. At 2 p.m., Eleanor's office felt like surgery waiting room, calm, sterile, essential. She wore a navy blazer, precise hair. I set the evidence on the glass table. Diane arrived next, carrying copies of notarized parcel logs and vet-targeted notices. Riley stayed in the car, clutching her phone. She handled outreach and would live stream the outcome once we had the green light. Eleanor laid everything out. We're filing a civil suit for forgery, trespass, and harassment against Colleen individually, not against the HOA. We need her deposed publicly. Then we initiate boundary revalidation through county courts. Diane exhaled. That'll draw fire. It will, Eleanor acknowledged. But you have veterans, families, plaintiffs withstanding. That Impala video, harassment, boundaries maps, fraud, swing, symbolic but valuable for emotional impact. I nodded, folding my arms. This wasn't about out-shouting. It was about out-planning. Eleanor handed me a folder. This is your deposition prep. Expect questions about motive, timeline. Be factual. No emotion. Riley messaged that she started the private page for live stream updates. We left the office around 4. On the drive back, Diane asked me to stop by the mailbox. She handed over a thin manila envelope stamped from county records. They refused to process the 2013 boundary redraw. They never notarized the change. The county flagged it with a notice that never got forwarded. A smokeless match struck. My jaw unclenched. Back at home, under that porch bench, I read the notice. Invalid boundary alteration. Refer to section 24.6c. Colleen broke the law, I said. My voice sounded distant to me. Riley appeared behind me, phone in hand, face lit like sunrise. Everything's on stream. People care. We've got engagement already. I glanced at the tweets, messages from local vets, neighbors responding, praying for you. We need this. Then we heard it, Colleen's Lexus pulling in, tires crunching coarse gravel. My heart pricked. She stepped out. Masked surprise, clipboard in hand, sunglasses hiding eyes she never learned to hide behind. Mr. Landry, she said, voice crisp, we need to talk about the defamation claim you're preparing. She waved the clipboard like a baton. I didn't move. It's not defamation to say you forged legal documents. "I've got witnesses," she said, tightening her lips. "You'll be sorry." This was the moment. Diane stepped forward. "Is this a personal threat?" she asked, voice firm, whole body blocking Colleen from view of the house. Colleen's nose flared. "That's not what I said." Riley filmed. She held the phone steady. I felt strength wash over me. I looked at Colleen. "I'm not going to cave," then turned, gesturing at Diane. "We're proceeding legally. If your actions can't hold in court, I'll see you there." Colleen hesitated, blinked. Then without another word, she flicked the clipboard, got into her car, and left. Tires squealed, but not in triumph. More like a retreat. Riley exhaled hard. That was something. Diane placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did good." The sun warmed the porch bench ahead. That old wood felt steady under my hand. Our move was set. Civil suit, public deposition, veteran plaintiffs stepping forward. We were going from reaction to offense. That night, Riley posted the legal firm's letter and evidence highlights online. Comments poured in, neighbors, local vets, even a county official letting slip, "We're watching." Above us, the swing hummed quietly in the breeze. It wasn't just an artifact now, it was our rallying point. Because when roots matter, you don't wait for them to get pulled up. You hold on, and you let the truth grow loud. 2 days later, I stood outside the county clerk's office gripping a stack of signed affidavits, public record forms, and one very damning transcript. Diane was parking. Riley was already inside, phone ready, AirPods in, muttering final live stream checks. The legal counterstrike had to start on neutral ground, and nothing felt more surgical than this. Tile floors, beige paint, and the ticking second hand of government time. "Mr. Landry?" The clerk behind the glass called my name. I stepped up and slid the envelope through the slot. Depositions, boundary revalidation, and civil summons. Filed under harassment, trespass, and fraudulent document use. The clerk blinked. "You're filing against the HOA?" "No," I said calmly. "Against Colleen." "It. This isn't a neighborhood dispute, it's about personal violation." She nodded, her eyes flicking to the bold-typed exhibit labels. Swing footage, county notice 2013, audio, property threats. Behind me, Diane entered, holding a legal-sized folder with something new. "I found it," she said. "Meeting minutes from 2012. Colleen was warned not to alter boundaries without full vote. They never held the vote. She just redrew it." I took the folder like it was proof of error. "We've got her. Not just forgery. Intent." Out in the hallway, Riley was already speaking to the live stream. "And today we filed the suit. Public record, time-stamped. Let's see how the Queen of Cardboard Threats handles a courtroom." By evening, our evidence had gone from quiet binder to digital wildfire. The video clip of Colleen threatening legal action outside our porch, complete with Diane's interruption, hit 12,000 views. Comments weren't subtle. "Hope that bench holds up in court. It's seen war." "Imagine forging documents to bully veterans." "Subpoena the clipboard." Funny thing, people fight harder for symbols than they do for policy. And that swing? It wasn't just wood and bolts anymore. It was a line in the sand. That night, I got a message from someone I didn't expect. James Elwood, retired county zoning officer. I'd only met him once, years ago, during Dad's renovation request for the fence line. "Your name came across my desk," he wrote. "Back in 2012, your father challenged Colleen's attempt to redraw the line. He had the original parcel tape map. It disappeared." I sat there for a full minute. "Disappeared how?" I typed back. "Building office got cleaned out that year," he replied. "But I saved a copy, backed up on CD. Might want to come by." I showed the message to Riley and Diane. Diane's lips parted slightly. "She's been doing this for over a decade." "Let's go," I said. Elwood Loted lived 30 minutes out, tucked into an old ranch house with a slanted mailbox and wind chimes that whispered secrets. He greeted us in cargo shorts, holding a CD like it was gold. "I don't want trouble," he said, "but your dad was the real deal. Kept meticulous records. Said he knew this HOA would turn ugly." The CD was labeled in Sharpie, property line, original, lane, creek lot, 9. I stared at the handwriting. Dad's, no doubt. Back home, we dug out an old laptop with a disk reader, because of course modern machines didn't bother anymore. The map loaded slow, pixel by pixel, and then there it was, our full property line, not the shrunken version Colleen had jammed into the HOA bylaws. Riley leaned in. "You know what this means?" "Yeah," I said. She buried this so she could shrink the lot, then use that as leverage to harass us. She weaponized paperwork. Diane pointed. We get this verified by zoning. It becomes our Exhibit A. It undercuts everything she's tried to claim. I smiled, not wide, just solid. At 3 a.m., I uploaded the file to 3 different encrypted drives, printed hard copies, even emailed a version to Eleanor with the subject line, Dad never lost. The next morning, I walked past the swing again, paused. The sun hit it at the same angle it did when I was 10, watching Dad sand the armrest smooth. This wasn't revenge, it was restoration. Because the most dangerous thing Colleen ever underestimated wasn't my rage, it was my memory, and my family didn't forget what was ours. I didn't sleep the night after the map loaded. Not from stress, adrenaline, the kind that turns your chest into a ticking metronome, every breath measured, every step forward, loaded. By 7 a.m., I had prints of the map couriered to the zoning office, the county clerk, and our lawyer's desk. By 10, the swing was roped off in bright yellow tape. Preservation notice pending legal review. Riley filmed the whole thing like it was a war monument. This isn't petty, she said to the camera. It's precedent. Meanwhile, Diane was quiet. She stood across the sidewalk, arms folded, her HOA badge still clipped to her hip like a curse she couldn't shake. I walked up to her. You okay? She hesitated. You ever feel like you've been holding your breath for 10 years and suddenly someone tells you it's safe to exhale? I nodded. Your moment's coming. She looked down at the swing, then whispered, That woman ruined more than yards. She rewrote entire households. Later that afternoon, the email from Eleanor came through. I opened it in the kitchen, Riley watching from across the island. Subject, Colleen's official record. Inside were 6 attachments. Most damning, a scanned copy of an unsigned fine log from 2013, listing over $12,000 in penalties Colleen had personally issued to non-compliant members, all later reversed by vote. Eleanor wrote, We never saw this file. She kept it off the HOA record. These were fake warnings used to scare people into compliance. You weren't her first target. The name at the top of the list? Michael Landry Sr. Dad, I muttered, feeling the burn behind my eyes before the full weight dropped. Riley leaned closer, silent. It wasn't about grass height or mailbox paint. It was about erasure. Quiet, bureaucratic erasure. She started this a long time ago, Riley whispered. No, I said, fingers tightening around the paper. She picked the wrong family to finish it with. By evening, we had the zoning office's official reply. The map James gave us was confirmed, authentic, dated, and superseding Colleen's revision by nearly a decade. That alone would invalidate half her citations, including mine. I printed the confirmation and walked straight to Colleen's door. Didn't knock. She opened it anyway, probably saw me on her Nest cam. Her expression was a masterclass in false civility. Mr. Landry, she said, voice tight, do you really think playing archaeologist will save your little swing? No, I said, holding the paper up, but this will. She barely glanced at it before slamming the door. No protest, no scream, just a click. That told me she'd seen it coming. Riley uploaded the zoning map, Eleanor's message, and James's CD photo to the community blog, timed just as the HOA newsletter went live. The clash was surgical. While Colleen's email warned about unauthorized structures near shared walkways, Riley's post said, Breaking, zoning confirms HOA president used invalid boundary lines, public records available below. And the replies? Just walked the lot. That bench has been there longer than my youngest. Can we recall a board president midterm? Tag every news outlet. This is textbook HOA overreach. But the most important reply came in private, from someone who hadn't spoken since the swing was first removed. Eleanor, Michael, I'm resigning tomorrow. I've spoken to 4 neighbors who will back your motion for a special meeting. I'll bring the rest of the minutes, the ones Colleen never shared. Consider this my final act. I forwarded her message to Diane. No words, just a subject line. She cracked. Diane replied, I'm ready. We had 7 days until the emergency board meeting. 7 days until the trap we'd been building, thread by thread, would snap shut in full view of the people Colleen once ruled without question. And this time, we wouldn't raise our voices. We'd raise the map. And let truth do what her lies never could, stand the test of daylight. Have you ever uncovered something your HOA tried to bury, something that changed everything? Drop your story in the comments. Let's expose how far they'll go and how much further we can push back. And tell me, where are you watching from? Your neighborhood might be next. The moment I walked in, that meeting room, the entire HOA board fell quiet. Not because they were scared, not yet, but because I wasn't alone. Ellie followed right behind me, clutching a plastic folder with a yellow post-it barely hanging on. From Dad's truck, read it. Mark trailed last, still pale, still trying not to be seen. But this time he didn't sit with them. He stood next to me. You're not on the agenda, Marlene snapped, flipping through papers like she'd lost control of her own breath. That's funny, I said, sliding my chair back as I opened my laptop, because this, I nodded toward the table, is no longer your meeting. You don't get to hijack. Actually, I do. By Clause 14C of the bylaws you all shoved down our throats last year, remember that amendment? Any homeowner can challenge emergency actions if fraud or safety risk is involved. You declared an emergency. I'm declaring fraud. Marlene's face didn't move, but her knuckles gripped the arms of her seat like she was preparing for impact. I clicked play. The room filled with the sound of her voice, her fake call to 911, the way she made her voice shake, the made-up break-in, the lie that could have gotten me arrested, or worse. A ripple passed through the room. Some board members went still, one gasped, but Marlene just tilted her head and smiled like none of it mattered. That could be anything, she said smoothly. A prank? Deep fake? Your daughter's laptop acting up again? Ellie didn't speak. She didn't have to. She just lifted the folder and laid out every single document, time-stamped server logs, motion alerts, the footage angle only our private Dashcam captured. It showed Marlene holding the master key. It showed her glancing around before inserting it into the car's lock. It showed her yanking on the door handle with both hands, and then, the most damning part, the moment she pulled out her phone, paused, and looked directly into the camera she didn't know existed, before dialing. That's you, right? I asked, tone low. She blinked once. I was checking the property. For safety. You said you saw someone breaking in. That was your exact phrase. Except no one was there, and the door was locked. And that, Marlene, I pointed at the file, is a felony. I thought she'd fight back harder, but she didn't. She just laughed. You really think anyone's going to take your side? You think the cops care? They never show up for you people. Not really. You people. There it was. Ellie stood up. Mark did too, and this time he cleared his throat. I care, he said, voice almost trembling. And I've recorded every closed-door board session since March, including the vote to override lock codes without notice, including the part where you said, and I quote, if we rattle the cage hard enough, he'll fold or move. Marlene's eyes went wide. You bugged us? No, he said. I'm the secretary. I archived everything like you told me. Just never deleted anything. He placed a flash drive on the table. The silence broke. Carolyn, the board's treasurer, stood up and walked out. One of the newer board members followed her. Marlene stared at the flash drive like it had fangs. Your move, I said quietly. She stood abruptly, grabbing her briefcase. This is harassment. And filing false reports is a felony, I said. Good luck proving I was the one harassing. As she stormed out, Ellie looked over at me. Did we win? She asked. Not yet, I said, but we just pulled the pin. By the time we left that room, the ripple had become a wave. And the neighborhood? It was listening now. Marlene didn't go quietly. The next morning, a notice was taped to every door in the neighborhood. Emergency board meeting, HOA, president under review. Bold letters, no HOA seal, just a timestamp and a location. The community clubhouse, 6 p.m. The weird part? It wasn't sent by the board. It was sent by the homeowners. By the time Ellie and I walked through the double doors that evening, the room was already packed. Folding chairs scraped the tile as people squeezed into corners. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in months nodded. Some even smiled. One guy clapped me on the back and whispered, "About damn time." Mark sat in the front row, hands folded in his lap, looking like he'd aged 10 years in a single day. He gave me a faint nod. The podium at the front still had Marlene's nameplate. She showed up 5 minutes late, dressed like it was a courtroom, pearl earrings, stiff blazer, that trademark smirk stretched tight. Her eyes flicked over the crowd. You could see it, the crack in her confidence. She didn't know who had her back anymore. Let's begin, she said. tapping the mic like this was still her show. "You're not chairing this," Mark said, standing. "Not anymore." People murmured, cameras clicked, phones held higher now. Mark cleared his throat and held up a copy of the bylaws. Clause 3, subsection D. The board president may be placed under community review if 1/3 of registered homeowners submit cause. As of today, we've received over 60 signatures. You're suspended pending investigation. Marlene barked a laugh. "On what grounds?" "Abuse of authority," he said. "Harassment, illegal surveillance, falsifying emergency calls, and misuse of HOA funds to purchase master keys." Her smirk twitched. "That's speculation." "No," I said, stepping up. "That's evidence." I placed a small speaker on the table and hit play. The audio from the call again, the footage of her at my car, then Mark's files, the secret recordings of her bragging about soft eviction tactics, saying things like pressure cracks people faster than fines ever will. But the room didn't explode like I thought it would. It went still. Not empty still, charged still. It was the quiet you get when a crowd shifts from curiosity to fury. One by one, people started standing. They didn't yell, they didn't shout, they just stood, row after row of silent resistance. Even Diane, who'd always backed Marlene before, stood up. She held a printed email, trembling in her hand. "I was told to delete this," she said. "It's a thread from Marlene, instructing us to monitor specific homes for non-compliance patterns. Only certain families were listed, all of them, not white." There, it was said. The air turned electric. Marlene opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "You weaponized a master key," I said. "You tried to trigger police action on a lie. You built an entire system of control based on fear and silence, and now, no one's afraid of you." "Get out," someone muttered. A woman in the back added, "You don't speak for us." Ellie slid her hand into mine. Tight. Solid. Marlene grabbed her bag like it might shield her. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You think the HOA's going down with me?" "No," I said. "We're rebuilding it." When she stormed out, the silence broke, like air finally returning to the room. Mark stepped up again. "We'll need a temporary vote for board leadership, but first, we open the floor. Anyone who's been wronged, silenced, fined, stalked, speak now." And they did. One after another, neighbors rose, shared finds that came from nowhere, photos of their backyard lights being cited. One man broke down describing how his autistic son was harassed over a lawn sign. By the end, it wasn't about me anymore. It was about everyone who'd stayed quiet, thinking they were alone. The first board meeting without Marlene didn't look like much. Plastic chairs, a folding table, a chipped whiteboard that hadn't been used in a decade. But the room felt different, lighter. No cameras hidden behind exit signs, no hush in the corners, just neighbors who'd finally stopped whispering. Mark took the center seat, now acting chair. Diane sat beside him, still looking like she wasn't sure she belonged. Ellie was across from me, notebook open, calm but watchful. And I sat back, no longer needing to lead the charge, just part of the rebuild. "I move we reallocate all surveillance funding toward common area repairs," said Diane. "Seconded," Ellie said, not missing a beat. "All in favor?" Hands rose, nearly unanimous. The two holdouts, gone by the next meeting. We didn't call it justice, it wasn't neat enough for that, but it was something better, accountability, owned and earned. When the news broke, yes, actual news, about Marlene's formal charges for misuse of emergency services and tampering with private property, I got a call from the city investigator. "She tried to name you as a threat," he told me, "said you were militant. We reviewed the tapes. Looks like you were the one being hunted." I just laughed, not out of joy, but relief. I didn't have to explain anymore. Let the footage do the talking. Let her legacy burn itself out. 2 weeks later, Ellie and I drove back up to the Ridge Trail, the one behind the neighborhood where Dad's old bench still stood beneath the oak. I hadn't sat on it since the night before the first notice hit my door. It had always felt off limits, like going back would make me realize nothing had changed. But it had. We brushed the leaves off and sat together in the evening hush. No sirens, no fake complaints, just birdsong and the slow hum of July heat sinking into the soil. "You think they'll really stick with it?" Ellie asked. "They already are," I said. "We're not building something new. We're just scraping off the mold and letting the original shine through." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Grandpa would have liked that." Yeah, I said. He would have said we reclaimed the easement and the soul. And he'd be right. B. Because the truth was, it was never just about the car or the camera or even the master key. It was about the idea that power could walk into your life, fake a crisis, and call it control. And that when you pushed back, with facts, with footage, with your name said loud and clear, they'd realize you were never alone. We engraved a new plaque on the bench that week. Ellie's idea. This space was always ours. Now it's safe again. When we unveiled it during the community potluck, yeah, we brought those back too, people clapped. But more than that, they stayed, lingered, talked, told stories about the way things used to be and the way they could be again. That's the thing no HOA bully prepares for, the after. The moment the silence lifts and folks start reclaiming more than just property lines. They reclaim time, peace, legacy, and maybe most importantly, each other. Ellie stood up to give a toast, her voice steady. My dad didn't just fight for our house, she said. He fought for yours too, and for everyone who thought they had to just take it. Her voice cracked, just for a second. He taught me what dignity looks like, and that it doesn't need permission. The crowd rose again, not for drama, just respect. As I looked out across the faces, young couples, retirees, kids sneaking cookies, I realized the real win wasn't Marlene getting charged. It was watching a neighborhood start breathing again. Some people try to lock a community down with rules. Turns out the key to beating them is remembering who actually owns the door. Let me know in the comments, have you ever faced off against a power-hungry HOA? What did you do to take your rights back? Or tell me where you're watching from. Your story deserves to be heard too.